Hey everyone, Robert Ferringo and Raphael of Esparza of Doc Sports back with What Are the Odds? Before we get to today's breakdown of the games and numbers that jumped out at us, I just want to do a little house cleaning here. First, go to docsports.com for all your sports handicapping needs. We are the #1 team of sports information specialists and sports handicappers in the country. Also, down below in the description, be sure to click on that free 60 link. What that will do is take you to Doc Sports. It will hook you up with $60 free credit to be used towards any picks, any handicapper, any sport that you want. Our top games for football, for example, are generally $30. So it's basically 2 free top games from any one of our 12 award-winning handicappers. So, all right, got that out of the way. Let's get down to some football. Before we get to that, Raphael, just want to say happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone that is watching this video and taking a little bit of time out for us. Raphael, what was the first number that jumped out at you this week when you were looking across the board?
There's a whole bunch of them did, but then after we watched Tuesday's show in college football, then all my numbers pretty much got a little bit Willy Wonka just because of what could happen. I think you're going to see chaos today. So I thought the Clemson, South Carolina number was a little bit off on just what I saw yesterday on Tuesday with the committee. I think the we're going to talk about this Michigan, Ohio State. It's a rivalry game. I know the numbers should be what it is, but anything can happen when two teams hate each other as they do in Michigan and Ohio State. And let's face it, UCLA, USC, is it really a rivalry game anymore when these two teams play? I know they're not playing this weekend, but it's just funny how that game used to mean so much, and now it means absolutely nothing. But we'll talk about USC because Notre Dame's coming to town.
Okay, so this week is the busiest sports betting week of the entire year. Okay, this is #1. That week around Christmas and New Year's with all the bowl games, the end of the NFL, that's #2. First week of March Madness is #3, and then probably the opening week of NFL college football is #4. So this is the busiest week of sports betting throughout the entire year. Draw on your experience. Do you have any tips? Do you have any tidbits? Any tricks? Any suggestions for the viewers out there of how they can navigate this and not kind of get swept up in it?
Yeah, if there's football on TV, that means the odds makers are just watching football. You know what? College basketball has some mistake lines on the board because they're not changing numbers quickly. You know what? Hockey's also being played during this busy time, and the NBA is being played at this time. Just because the pigskin is on the tube, look at the other sports because you might be missing some great numbers. There was a Champions League game yesterday that the odds makers forgot to move the total just because there was college basketball on the tube and mistaken on there. I know we're a football frenzy USA. Nothing other sport comes to even close. But when you're looking for money, just because you're cashing a sport, not football, green is green, no matter what sport you're cashing.
Yeah, I think my advice, and I could talk about this for hours, I will spare you and our viewers. But one tip is do your work early. Okay, it's going to be chaotic starting tonight, going through the actual Thanksgiving holiday, and then all this weekend. People are with their families, or they're out with their friends, or they're going here, they're going there. Do your work early. If you're going to be betting money this week, take 30, 40, 50 minutes at some point today and kind of map out your strategy for the weekend. Oh, I'm looking at this game. Oh, I want to see what this number is going to be in college basketball on Friday. I kind of like this number in college football, but I want to see if it moves. Do some of your work early so that when you're making those split second or those drunken decisions later on in the week, you're at the bar with a bunch of friends and everybody wants to get in on a game. You already have a little bit of a game plan and a little bit of a background on where you were looking earlier in the week. So that would be my bit of advice. Okay, let's get into the games. And Raphael, this number was the #1 spread that jumped out at me when the numbers hit the board earlier in the week, and that's Michigan, Ohio State. Okay, the game, right? Now, I've been saying since May that Ohio State was going to kill Michigan this year and that this was going to be one of my biggest bets of the year. In the offseason, this number was around 7.5. Okay, now we are seeing this number at 20.5. It opened actually at 23.5 and has come down, but this is the largest spread that has been posted in this marquee rivalry series since 1978. This is a huge number. What are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, raise your hand if you grabbed that 7.5, and raise your hand if you bought the minus 130 on juice to move it down to 7. Yes, so, yes. I'm not gonna say what sportsbook did it, but actually charged me 30 cents instead of normal 20 cents to move a half a point on this game. But I took it because I knew there was no way in God's green gambling earth that it was going to be 7 or 7.5 on November 29th when these two teams play. And I know some Michigan money will probably come in because let's face it, yes, Ohio State, on paper, it looked like they beat up on Indiana. But if you take away special teams in that game, Indiana didn't actually play that bad. You take away the 14 points on a kicker and a bad snap. This game was only a 3 to 4 point game that Ohio State probably could have won that game. Indiana played really well in the second half. Now, Michigan's not close to Indiana right now, but it's a rivalry game. A week ago, this number was 22. And now it keeps on coming. I don't think we're going to see the number continue to come down. I think we'll see 20.5, maybe 21, depending on what the wise guys do after they grab their second plate on Thanksgiving. Because normally Thursday nights is when big, heavy money comes in college football. Is it going to happen this week? Probably, because wise guys don't take holidays. They don't. The big money comes in no matter what Thursday it is. But I do believe this number will stay close between 20.5, 21. This one's going to be very interesting. I wanted to say take Ohio State, but after I watched the game again, Ohio State, Indiana, I wasn't really sold on Ohio State, especially in the second half. This is a stay away game for me, but I can see a much closer game than what the number's looking at.
Yeah, I bet the max in the offseason because for me, anything under 10 on this game was going to be a win. There is absolutely no way that I saw this being a 3-touchdown spread by the time we got around to game day. Now, Michigan has won 3 straight in the series. That's their longest streak in 30 years. So Ohio State definitely has that pent-up revenge that they want to unleash. But Michigan also needs this game to get to 6 wins, right? Like they need this to get bowl eligible. On top of the fact that they were the national champions last year, it's been a disappointing season this year. But if they win this game, it was a great season, right? I think all the Michigan faithful will be relatively happy if they were able to pull the upset on Ohio State and deal them that second loss. So you're going to get the best that Michigan has to offer in this game. Again, I mentioned over the last 40 plus years, there's only been 2 other times that this spread has been even close to that. In 2020, it was minus 30. Ohio State was minus 30, but they didn't play that game because of the COVID year. And in 2014, Ohio State was minus 21. All right. And they only won by 2 touchdowns. It was a 42-28 game that went well over. My debate is, do I want a middle? Do I want to shoot for that big fat middle here? But when it comes to my clients, there's no way I would recommend laying the points with Ohio State, basically. I'm with you. For me, it's Michigan or stay away. And those are the decisions to be made. But it's really just bizarre to see one of the biggest rivalries in all of college sports, 2 of the top programs, and to see a number this big. That's jarring. I can't remember the last time I was that surprised by a number like this.
If you're looking at a value in this game, it's probably the total. The total has gone over 10 straight games, and the total's 43. The Michigan's total went over last week, and they play Northwestern, which me and you could probably score a touchdown against Northwestern. So if you want to see value, if you just want to bet the game early at the bar because you might have a problem because it's an early game, I would say maybe take a shot at the total.
All right, next game on our list is Kansas at Baylor. Kind of a sneaky game in the Big 12. I think it's going to be a good game. Baylor is a team that absolutely no one has mentioned, talked about, or has been on their radar. But they're actually playing really, really good football. They have won 5 straight games, both straight up and against the spread. I'm still a little salty with Baylor because I lost a big play on them earlier in the season at Colorado. If you remember, they gave up that Hail Mary on the final play of regulation and then lost in overtime. But now looking at how Colorado's season is kind of played out, not a bad loss for the 7-4 Baylor team. On the other side is Kansas, who is as hot as anybody in the country right now. I mean, the last 3 weeks, they have beaten Iowa State, BYU, and Colorado. 3 very good teams, all 3 of whom absolutely needed that win. And the Jayhawks took care of business. They're 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 games. Now, Raphael, this was surprising to me early in the week that Kansas was still posted as an underdog. They opened at +1.5. So given as the momentum that they had and how well they had been playing the last 3 weeks, I was surprised by that. But then that number has swung a full 3 points. Kansas is a 1.5-point favorite in this game. Break down that line movement, and how would you handle this game between, again, 2 teams that have covered the spread in 5 straight, 2 of the hottest teams in the country?
Well, I'll break this game even more because Baylor opened up as a 3-point favorite a week ago. So, yes, the numbers, it's funny how people say, oh, but the number came out on Monday and Tuesday at this number. Yeah, but it came out mostly, I hate to say it, our bosses hates to say this, but offshore, who actually do the opening numbers, not here in Vegas, not Circa. I'm sorry. Most of the books' numbers come offshore. They opened it up 3 and quickly got bet down to 1.5. Yes, both teams red hot are covering against the spread, especially Kansas, who really messed up college football playoff. Because let's face it, the committee wants Colorado, the committee wants Dion there, and the committee and the TV ratings wanted Dion in college football playoff. But then here comes Kansas to give them the double bird on what we saw last week. And so I'm a little bit torn on this one because now that we're here, it's November 27th when we're viewing this. Maybe if you're watching it tomorrow because you don't want to talk to the wife and kids on Thanksgiving, you're watching our great show. I'm a little bit torn on this one because this game doesn't really mean anything. Right now, we just saw the college football playoff yesterday. None of these 2 teams are going to be in a college football playoff. None of these 2 teams are going to put wrenches on there. Maybe on style points, if let's say if Kansas continues to whoop up, then okay, the Colorado loss doesn't look out that bad. I wish Kansas didn't lose those horrible games in the beginning of the season because they're playing some of the best football besides maybe South Carolina that no one's really talking about, than anybody in college football right now. But this is when you say, hey, you know what? You shouldn't lose some games in the beginning of the season because it's going to bite you in the butt now, a.k.a. ask Alabama right now. I'm a little bit bummed that Kansas lost those games because they're playing some of the best football right now, and we can't say we're going to see them in a legitimate bowl game because of their stumbles.
Well, that's why this game actually does have meaning, is Kansas needs this win to become bowl eligible. They need to get that 6th win. And that is going to be a theme, and that is something to consider in your handicapping throughout this week, okay? Not everybody's shooting for the college football playoff. That's not where the bar is set for the lion's share of programs across the country. A lot of these teams just want to get to a bowl game. They want to finish over 500, get to a bowl, take that trip, go win a bowl game, and then that's a successful season. And that's Kansas's motivation right here, is they want to get to that 6th win. So this game means everything to them. If they were at home, I would absolutely be all over the Jayhawks. I still kind of like them in this spot. Like I said, the problem is Baylor was a team I was on earlier. They were a little disappointing. Now they're starting to play like who I thought they would be. And this is one of those games where you really don't look at that number. That 1.5 shouldn't sway you one way or the other. There's no value on it. Just pick who you think is going to win this game and go with it. All right. Getting back to maybe the most impactful game of the weekend. A lot of big games all over college football. But Notre Dame USC will have serious college football implications. All right, Notre Dame, full disclosure, I'm still riding high on the Irish. They were my 8-unit college football game of the year last week. They absolutely hammered Army. I knew Army was a fraud, so I'm very, very happy with that. A lot of people were betting big on that game. A lot of people obviously watching that game because Notre Dame was involved. Raphael, do you feel like that love of the Irish has influenced this line with Notre Dame as a 7.5-point road favorite here? Or do you think that that number is warranted based on how disappointing USC has been? They're really just not as good as everybody wanted them to be. And maybe how undervalued Notre Dame has been all this year because they've covered the spread in 7 straight games.
A little bit of both. I mean, there's 2 teams that have point differentials just out the window. Is Notre Dame and the best football team in the state of Louisiana for 3 straight years. The Tulane Green Wave. No, not the Saints, not the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, who's just been taking care of business just like Notre Dame has been taking care of business ever since that loss against Northern Illinois. I'm a little bit torn because this game screams Alabama, Oklahoma. Everyone think, oh, Notre Dame should roll. Had an easy win last weekend against a bad Army team at Yankee Stadium. Hey, Yankee fans, you finally got to see a winning team play yesterday last weekend. Congrats. This one's torn. I think Notre Dame should whoop up. Should have no problem against USC. But every time I look at this number and say, why is it not 9? Or why is it 8.5? Or why is it more money coming in on Notre Dame? I blink my eye and I see the final score of Alabama and Oklahoma. Because raise your hand if you thought Oklahoma had a shot last week, the way Alabama took care of business against LSU in Baton Rouge on a Saturday night. Let's put that in perspective, because that's a tough place to be on a Saturday night. I think this game just looks too easy. I want to say bet the house, ask your wife for an allowance, tell your wife don't buy the ham, just buy the turkey, and put it all on Notre Dame. But this one screams Bama, Oklahoma.
Okay, to your point, Notre Dame's last 6 wins have all come by at least 21 points, and their last 6 wins have been by an average of 35.3 points per game. They're not beating teams. They are absolutely punishing them. And I don't want to hear about, the strength of schedule and, that's weak competition. No, when you play bad teams, you need to beat the piss out of them if you're a good team. And that's exactly what Notre Dame has been doing. Okay. And it's not that easy, because if it was that easy, all those SEC teams that are crying about the fact that they're on the outside looking in, they'd have more wins. Okay. So it's not easy to do what Notre Dame has been doing on a weekly basis. However, I kind of agree with your instinct here about USC as kind of a lively home dog, because USC has been a disappointment relative to where their expectations were early in the season. However, 5 of their losses this year have come by a touchdown or less. Those 5 losses have been by an average of just 4 points per game. They are a lot closer to being that 8, 9, 10 win team that people were expecting than people understand, really. This conference that they play in is absolutely no joke. The level of physicality that Notre Dame is going to bring to this game is not something that USC has not handled. It is something they have had a problem with at times this year, but Notre Dame is not going to overwhelm them the same way that they did Army, because Army had basically been playing a bunch of glorified FCS programs for a month. Notre Dame is traveling from one side of the country to the other, going from more of a cold weather smash mouth game out to California, where USC is going to try and throw the ball, push the tempo, play it a little bit faster pace. So this is a night and day difference from week to week for Notre Dame, and all the pressure is on them, right? They've beaten USC 5 of the last 6 times. They're ranked in the top 10. They're comfortably in the playoff thing. They should dominate this game, right? All of that is what's making me look at USC and look at those points. One final point for those of you trend bettors in this: the favorite, Raphael, is 8-2 against the spread in the last 10 and have covered 3 straight. Trends like that, does that factor into your handicapping ever or at all?
Normally it does. I would look at a trend more to this game than, let's say, Michigan, Ohio State, because that Michigan team, those trends were all all Harbaugh trends, and all players are now playing in the NFL. These trends right here are a little bit different. So I would look at these trends between these 2 teams than, let's say, Ohio State, Michigan's.
All right, we're going to shift gears now, head to the NFL. Thanksgiving, probably the best game on Thanksgiving. The game that I wish that they would have, the NFL is all about flexing games on a different times, off different days. Really wish that they would take this Miami-Green Bay game and move that to the 4 o'clock window and push the Giants-Cowboys to that 8 o'clock window, where everyone's too drunk to care or even notice that there's football on. But this is the best game of the day by far. We have Miami headed to Green Bay. This was one of the games that you tabbed as jumping out at you. So I'm seeing the number as a hard 3, and I feel like it's been around there since open. So why don't you take this one away and tell me what you're seeing here?
Well, first of all, okay, hats off to the odds makers on this one because I know what they did. They opened up this one 3.5 across the board, and that tells me that they wanted Dolphin money early because people are like, "Ooh, the Dolphins, Tua, they've been fantastic," which they have been. He looks like a total different quarterback than his head that got scrambled a couple months ago. Their offense has been moving. Love the tight end action that they've been doing in Miami, so I can see money coming in on the Dolphins. But it's going to be cold in Green Bay. And the bettors and the odds makers knew that. That's why they put up 3.5 to get the Dolphin money. Because now that we're getting an inch closer and closer, and people are watching, ooh, what's the weather going to be like on Thanksgiving? And we got this cold front coming down from Canada. Pretty much in 80% of the United States is going to be cold because of that cold front. You know where the middle smack of that one's going to be in? In Green Bay. It's going to be probably in the high teens when the kickoff's in here. So you know what the bettor's going to look? Ooh, that's frozen tundra weather. We're gonna bet the Packers now. So now it's solid 3 instead of that 3.5. They got the Dolphin money that they wanted. Now they can cushion all the Green Bay Packers 3 and money line bets on this one. I think Green Bay has to be the player. Really like the momentum they're in right now, especially on the D side. And now that they're able to run the ball because their offensive line is healthy throughout the couple of weeks, I like where Green Bay is this one. Do I think it's going to go down to 3? No, they're just going to move the juice around. So if you're looking for Green Bay minus 2.5, I would be shocked to see it. They'll probably just move the juice minus 115, minus 120, back and forth, back and forth. But I do believe the weather conditions could be. We all know the Dolphins do not play well in cold weather. So I think the money's going to come in on Green Bay, and I like Green Bay in this spot.
Do you see that number going back up to 3.5?
Yes, because it's the late game. It all depends what Joe Public does on the first 2 games on that one. We could see a little small movement on 3. And it depends on what book has the most money coming in at Dolphins on that plus 3.5. I haven't checked just because I've been a little bit busy. I haven't really looked at the 4 books that I have access to see what their handle is on lopsided and stuff like that. I have not looked on that, but I can see 3.5 if the money continues to come down. Because let's face it, when they put the TV screen on in Green Bay and you can see breath on the announcers and all that, what are people going to be doing? Logging onto their accounts and putting money on Green Bay.
And it's chase the favorite, right? Like you said, depends on how
favorite
people do.
favorite.
Depends on how people do in that early game. That late game is either the double down or the try and get it back, and they're gonna run to the favorite. To be completely honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised to see if it gets up to 4. Okay, because as you mentioned, Miami notorious for being terrible in cold weather. They are not just terrible in cold weather; they've been really bad in prime time. The Dolphins are 3-9 against the spread in their last 12 primetime games. They are 3-7 all time in games where the temperature was below 23 degrees. And I'm just not buying Miami at all anyway. I understand that they're playing better, but you got to look at where they started. They were pathetic, like really pathetic early in the season. And it wasn't just Tua, okay? They've won 3 straight games, but those wins have come against the Rams, the Raiders, and the Patriots. Not exactly a murderer's row there. Last year, Miami only beat 1 team that finished the season over 500. That was a 2-point win over Dallas late in the season. This year, the Miami Dolphins have played the easiest strength of schedule up until this point based on your opponent's winning percentage. So basically for 2 years in a row, Miami has been playing nothing but cupcakes, and they still aren't some dominant AFC team. Nobody's talking about them, in that class at the top of the AFC, which, they were a little bit last year. They might not even make the playoffs. So the fact that they're going on the road, the fact that it's cold weather, the fact that they haven't played anyone of Green Bay's caliber makes me love the Packers in this one, really. Green Bay has won 6 of their last 7 games. They're not covering the spread. They're only 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games. That may be why some people are sour on them, but I still believe in this team. They're in the best division in football. They're one of the best teams in the NFC, and I think that the Dolphins get lit up. I don't think that this game is going to be particularly close, and this game is 100% going to be on my card.
Well, I'm going to step back at this one because there is as I checked my phone while you were talking, and I could honestly say that I'm probably one of the few people that get text messages from sports books and stuff like that. And a 6-figure bet just came across the board on your Chicago Bears. Now we're seeing 9.5 drop down on this game. Who would have thought that with the highest offensive or the best offensive team in the NFL on Detroit Lions at home on Thanksgiving? I'm a little bit shocked that the wise guys, and I actually know who probably bet this, but 9.5. Wow, I'm actually a little blown away. So I'm a little stumbled right now as you were talking when I got the text message that that bet
How about
came
that?
in.
How about that, viewers? You got breaking news here on what are the odds, right? And I am not surprised by that at all because I have been talking with some people, with some bettors, with some handicappers all week. And I've been on an island with this, but I liked Chicago in that game. I absolutely loved them at plus 11. People forget this Bears team are incompetent in that they find ways to lose games, but they are not a bad team, if that makes sense. They have talent. They play hard. They can do some things. And last year, they outplayed Detroit in both of those games. If you remember, they had a 12-point lead with like 4 minutes left to go in Detroit last year when they played, blew that game. Thanks again, Matt Eberflus, and lost. And then when they got the revenge game in Chicago later in the season, they beat them like 28-13. So really, Chicago was the better team in both of those games. It's a rivalry game. It's a divisional game. Everybody's in love with Detroit right now, rightfully so. All they do is keep blowing people out and covering the spreads. But that number is thick, like a 10, 11-point spread, even 9.5. You know, the Bears aren't the Jets. The Bears aren't the Jaguars. They aren't one of those bad teams. They have a bad record because they've been finding ways to lose games, but they are not in that same class of just incompetent teams like the Patriots and Raiders and stuff like that. So be careful. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, I'm a little bit torn on the Bears because I feel bad for Caleb Williams because if they keep on losing games, Uber is going to be driving Uber as a job. He won't be looking for, he won't be head coach of the Bears. So that means Caleb Williams is going to have to go through another offensive coordinator, which he likes the one he has now. That's why he's been playing really good games, his back-to-back. But you bring in a new head coach, brings in a new offensive coordinator, and that takes a step back to Caleb Williams. Look at all the Bears quarterbacks that they've had with how many different coordinators. I just don't like it. That's why I'm hoping for a Bears W because I want to see Caleb Williams have success. I want to see any Bears quarterback have a success, not just Caleb Williams. But I'm a little bit torn on this one because I think if they lose another one and maybe lose one more, they're probably going to be looking for a new head coach. And if you're looking for Ben Johnson, I heard this morning that he's very questionable about wanting to be a head coach in the NFL, and he's probably the number one spot to get a coaching job.
Okay, Matt Eberflus is gone. He 100% is gone. The Bears won't fire him in season because for some reason, they're proud of the fact that they've never fired a head coach in the middle of the season. I don't know what that gets you, but they won't fire him during the season, but he's gone. He is an incompetent loser. His record speaks for himself. All of his late game meltdowns speak for themselves. Like, he's not.
Then keep the offensive coordinator. Then keep
No, I can tell you exactly what Chicago Bears need to do. Go out and get a proven head coach or a head coach with a track record, maybe a Mike Vrabel, even though I don't like the Bears switching to a 3-4 because that's kind of what Vrabel prefers. But he's kind of flexible. But he's kind of flexible like that because he came from that New England tree where they were a 4-3 defense. But Mike Vrabel is a proven coach. And then the guy to get is Clint Kubiak, the guy in your backyard in New Orleans. New Orleans is going to clean house. They're going to bring in a new head coach. I don't think that they're going to keep Rizzi as an interim. Clint Kubiak proved, especially early in the season, that he is the real deal. Take him and put him with Caleb Williams. Let him continue. He's from that Kubiak, Shanahan, McVay offensive tree. That's who the Bears need. They need a proven head coach and Clint Kubiak as the offensive coordinator, and that's how they will start to move forward. But this is a different video for a different time. We're gonna rein it back in and move out to the next game that really jumped out at me. And for me, this was the biggest surprise line in the NFL this week, and that's a Steelers-Bengals game. Okay, Bengals are favored at home. They open with them -3. I've seen some 2.5 out there while the Steelers money has poured in. And for me, this is like the ultimate stay away, Raphael, because on one hand, it is obviously a red flag that the Bengals are favored in this game, right? They're 4-7. They've been a disappointment. Steelers are riding high. They're going to the playoffs. They're 8-3. Everything looks great, right? You cannot ignore the fact that the odds makers made the Bengals the favorite. That is a red flag. That should be jumping out to people right here, okay? Now, under normal circumstances, if it was literally anyone but the Steelers, I would be betting the Bengals if they were favored in this spot against a team that has 4 or 5 more wins than them. The problem is I will never, ever, ever in my life bet against the Steelers as an underdog because Mike Tomlin is 61-31 against the spread as an underdog. He is probably the greatest underdog head coach in NFL history. But Raphael, break down this number. Why are the Bengals the favorites. Why is this line moving? And do you agree with my assessment that you should be running away from this game, or do you see value on either one of those sides?
Yeah, I see no value in this game. This one opened up 1.5 in the Bengals. And I thought, okay, 1.5, that's respected. I mean, the home team, the way they've been playing. Let's face it, Joe Burrow and the offense is not their problem. It's always been their defense, and sometimes the offensive line can do some laps, and Joe Burrow lays on his back half the game. But wow, up to 3 now. I'm a little bit shocked on this one. I want to say, give me the Steelers plus the 3, but I know the snow had a lot to do with it with Cleveland. But I mean,
Sure.
is Russell Wilson maybe taking some small steps backwards a little? I'm going to blame weather on this. I'm not going to put it all on him against Cleveland, but I need to see how he plays on a bounce back game off a loss to the Cleveland Browns. So yeah, this is a complete stay away. And now, unless for some odd reason we start seeing 3.5s pop up, which I don't think, because there is some 2.5s still out there, but you have to lay -120 on the juice at a 2.5. But this one's a complete stay away unless that evil half a point goes on Cincinnati at 3.5. Because let's face it, division games easily could be 16-13 final or 27-24 final, something like that. But they're going to stay away from me right now.
Yeah, I won't bet against the Steelers as an underdog. And again, even if that number was to spike to 3.5, it's highly improbable that that'll happen. But let's just say that it does. That makes me like the Steelers even less, because the only reason that the books would make that dramatic of a move is if somebody somewhere who knows something is betting big on the Bengals. And the takeaway from this game to the viewers is that this is why you don't handicap based on win-loss records, right? Because the odds makers are looking at this, and the Steelers are 8-3. But I don't think anybody really believes that they're as good as an 8-3 team would be, statistically speaking. And if you just look at their results, 2 or 3 of those games that they won, they could have lost. Okay. And Cincinnati's better than a 4-7 team. They should have beat, or they could have beat the Ravens a couple weeks ago if they convert that 2-point conversion. And they should have beat the Chargers last week. Their kicker just threw up on himself in the fourth quarter, missing those kicks. So they win those games. Then the Bengals are 6-5 right now instead of 4-7. You know, Steelers lose 1 or 2 of those close games, the Atlanta game, maybe games that they won earlier in the season. They're closer to 6-5. So this is why you don't handicap based on the win-loss records. You really have to deep dive into the statistics, and you have to take what the odds makers are giving you. They're telling you that there is not a large discrepancy between these two teams. So you really need to believe them. So, okay. Next game, Chargers and Falcons. This is a weird one because before last week's action, the Falcons were -1 pick on this game. Chargers lose on Monday Night Football, and now they become a pretty solid road favorite. But Raphael, they're in a very situational disadvantage here. They are off a loss, off a short week, off a Monday Night Football primetime game. They got to travel west to east for that 10 a.m. Pacific start. They are doing it against a Falcons team that is coming off a bye that you would assume would be rested and ready to go. Even though, you know what I think about bye week betting, it's still a bad situational spot for the Chargers here. So why are they such a commanding favorite, and why is the money moved so much?
Because first of all, Atlanta has played horrible at home. They lost to the Seahawks bad at home, and that's Geno Smith had a mediocre game in that one. It's not like he threw all the ball all around on that one. And the Falcons have been one of the disappointing, probably division-leading teams, and they need to be thinking about getting some wins because the way Tampa Bay played last week, they're sneaking behind them. But everything you said about the Chargers is correct, but you missed one point. Dobbins got hurt on Monday night. That was, I think, everyone's going to look at the paper. Everyone's going to look at ESPN and the stats. Oh, Baltimore rolled over the Chargers. It was an easy W. No, the Chargers were winning before Dobbins got hurt. And then the Chargers couldn't run the ball anymore because they didn't have, I don't want to say they're a two-headed monster, but when you have 2 good running backs, it confuses the defense because you don't know which one's going to get the ball. Someone has speed, some just running up the middle in the paint. I thought that was complete difference in the game when Dobbins got hurt because he was even doing stuff in the air on the screen passes, and he's a better blocker through this. So I thought that injury is the reason why the Ravens pretty much won the game. I think that's a big key in this one. I'm leaning towards the Falcons on this one, but I'm not sold on how they play at home. But they need to be playing better because Tampa Bay looked really good. I know they beat the Giants, but they beat up a bad team when you should beat up a bad team, and anyone that does this in the end zone, that's my quarterback.
Tampa Bay is going to catch them. Atlanta's not a very good team, and the main reason is they are soft. They are a very soft team. So playing against a very physical Chargers team is a really bad matchup for the Falcons. But again, to my point, as I mentioned, so they lose J.K. Dobbins, they lose their starting running back, and again, there's still almost a little too much confidence from the public on this Chargers team to move that number.
That's all money. That's all tickets. That's all tickets and money. That's to read the numbers. It has nothing to do. The odds makers didn't make the number. The tickets and money is the reason why that number is.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a little too much confidence here, shifting things towards the Chargers. I don't love the Falcons at all, but this is kind of a dangerous spot for a Chargers team that I think has played a little over its head. So be careful. Even if you like the Chargers this week, be careful. It's a bad situational spot for them. So, all right, last game we're going to talk about, and then we're going to get to our free picks. We got San Francisco at Buffalo. San Francisco, listen, everybody's been talking about them all week, so we're not going to rehash and retread everything about them this week. I will say that last week, them losing cashed my 8-unit NFL futures ticket. So thank you to the clients that signed up and cashed that ticket with me. I was selling all my San Francisco stock before the season started, so I am not at all surprised by what has happened to them, while the mainstream media and general NFL fans are surprised. I saw this coming a mile away. Raphael, they're in trouble. They played terrible in Green Bay. Brandon Allen didn't look even as good as I thought he would. I thought he would give them baseline competence last week. And even if you want to argue that he did, the guys around him didn't. Penalties, turnovers, drop balls. They're headed back east into cold weather, into Buffalo. San Francisco have a prayer here?
No, they're done. I'm tired of people saying, "Ooh, they're only one game out of the division." Blah 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 blah. They have injuries. If the 40, well, I should say when the 49ers do not make the playoffs next year, we're gonna talk about, oh, they didn't make the playoffs because of the injuries, of all the stuff they had. They had so many CMC. Still doesn't look like the same. Quarterback issues. We had a quarterback last week that I think delivered my pizza before he played a starting job in Brandon Allen. I didn't even know he was still in the league. Why didn't they have another back? Didn't they have? I can't think of their backup quarterback besides used to be Tennessee's backup quarterback. Whatever. And that one, I'm shocked that he played. So no, the 49ers are done. Buffalo is gonna have no issue, I think, winning this game. This is 7. This one will be 7.5. Because let's face it, I don't think Brock Purdy's going to play this game. And they have other issues. Trent Williams, he's probably the biggest injury that we really don't talk about. Is their offensive line looks so much different when he's not in there, and he's always hurt. So it's not like we don't see him. He's like the Embiid of the NFL when it comes to offensive line. But when he is there, they're a totally different team. So the offensive line is going to be shorthanded. Now you have Allen probably going to be the quarterback. So no, 49ers are done. I'm tired of saying, but they're only one game out of first. They can still make a comeback. Shut up. Give me a break. Just put a big X on them. Buffalo wins.
Yeah, night game, Orchard Park, Sunday night. That place is going to be going nuts. Love their Bills up in Orchard Park. Everything, they are going to be taking this game seriously, obviously, because they're still battling for that number 1 seed in the AFC, and San Francisco is still a name. So I don't think the Bills are going to come into this.
I think that's the only reason why we're talking about them and the people on TV, because they are still a name. That's why we have to listen about Cowboys crap.
2 things that I'm going to put out there that I want to know if this would factor into your decision making at all. Number 1. Buffalo is only 6-13 against the spread as a favorite of a touchdown or more. That's going back to 2022. Okay, so that's over the last 3 seasons. They have not been great as a big favorite. A lot of that has been because Josh Allen's the type of guy that turns the ball over, so he kind of keeps both teams in the game type of thing. So they're 6-13 against the spread as a large favorite. Number 2, the Bills are coming out of a bye. We saw it last week with Arizona. I've been screaming it to the high heavens for years and years and years. There's nothing in sports betting, in football betting, more overrated than betting teams off of a bye week, because you assume that they're going to be better off. They're going to be rested. They're going to be ready to go. None of that. They lose their momentum. We saw it last week with Arizona. Arizona was one of the hottest teams in the NFL going into their bye week. They come out, they look like absolute trash because they've been sitting around for 2 weeks. Does that worry you a little bit about Buffalo? Remember, their last time that they took the field was that very emotional Kansas City win. All right. So under normal circumstances, I'd be worried about them beating Kansas City, having a letdown the next week. This time they beat Kansas City, got to sit on that one for 2 weeks. Okay. Now they're facing a desperate San Francisco team. Do you worry that maybe they don't come out as sharp? Those are just two things to consider about this game. We both like the Bills, don't like the 49ers, but it's a big number. Buffalo's failures against the spread in this price range and them coming off a bye make you concerned at all about backing the Bills?
If this number moves, then yes, because I think it does go to 7.5 because Joe Public favoring over, and they're going to say, hey, if no Brock Purdy, I'm going to take Buffalo. It's going to be a big teaser game, going to be a big money line parlay play. So this number will probably move. Everything you said makes a lot of sense, but the injury bug, and if Purdy doesn't play and Allen's in there, then no, I would say. And one thing about those trends about 7 over, when you see a trend like that, you need to do your homework on that. Just because you read something's 10-1 against the spread, well, why don't you go back and look at those games? Sometimes there's injury involved in those games. Sometimes there was weather involved in those games that was covered. You have to do a little bit more research when you look at on that one. But this one is just, I don't like the 49ers because of all season long they've been shorthanded.
Yeah, I'm not going to go too far into the weeds about trend betting and how you incorporate that. I agree with you. Some trends matter, some don't. Like last week, going into that Kansas City Carolina game, a lot of people were hesitant to jump on the Chiefs because they've been so bad as a double-digit favorite under Patrick Mahomes. They do a lot of things phenomenally well, but they're covering like 37% of the time in the last 30 games as a double-digit favorite. Those trends matter to me. You got to know which are the important ones, which are the not important ones. You know, Lamar Jackson off of a loss is like 9-1, 10-1, something like that. That trend matters versus, you know, this team does this, east of the Mississippi on a Tuesday in 4 o'clock game. So, all right, Raphael, let's get the people out of here. Everybody's got Thanksgiving stuff to prepare for. Why don't you leave them with a free play?
I'm going to a Thanksgiving game. And no, I'm not going to the 2 out of 3 horrible NFL games that we have to suffer. I'd rather watch a bird get burnt in the oven than watch the first 2 games in the NFL. But I'm going to the best team in the state of Louisiana. I said it again. I'm going to say it 3 straight years. Tulane, better than the Saints, better than LSU, Raging Cajuns, the Warhawks of UN Monroe. But Tulane and Memphis are playing Thursday night on Thanksgiving. Give me the under. I know both teams can score a lot of points, especially Tulane. But Tulane's last 12 games, 10 of them have gone under at home. Their last 3 wins, they've only given up a total of 9 points to Green Wave defense. And it's going to get cold. There's a wind for coming. It's probably going to be really windy on that game. Maybe see some rain. I like the under at 56 between Memphis and Tulane.
56 is a little low. I would have had that in the mid 60s for that number anyway. But okay, mine, we already talked about this game. It's one of the ones we discussed. You can probably tell by the way I talked about it. I feel pretty strongly about it. Give me Green Bay. Green Bay is going to hammer Miami. I'm not buying the Dolphins' resurgence. They are not as good as people want them to be. They look at all the flash, they look at all the names, but the reality of the situation is that over the last 2 years, they've beaten bad teams, and anytime they have run up against anyone showing even baseline competence, much less the explosiveness and capability that Green Bay has, they have lost. Okay, San Francisco, we don't like them, but anyone that watched that Green Bay San Francisco game last week, we're too busy talking about all the things San Francisco wasn't doing and not talking enough about all the things that Green Bay did do. They embarrassed that 49ers team. I think that they got it in them again in this one. I don't see Miami's defense holding Green Bay below 30 points. And I'm sorry, but Miami's offense just hasn't been consistently explosive enough to think that they can keep up in a shootout. I have this one around 34-21, 31-19, somewhere in that range, but I don't think it's close. I think Green Bay wipes the floor with them. All right, he's Raphael Esparza. I'm Robert Ferringo. We are Doc Sports. Happy Thanksgiving once again to everyone. Carpe diem and good luck.